So I think we'll start with the meditation as usual, just 5 minutes, and then we're going to hear from our director. But many people arrive during the meditation, so I think if we wait a little while, then more people will be here. Okay, so go ahead as usual and set up your posture, making sure you're comfortable and your back is loosely straight, allowing your shoulders to relax. And then spend some time reaffirming your intention, your motivation for participating in this class, making it as wide and broad and high as possible. And then spend some time calming yourself, focusing on your body, relaxing into your breath, and then slowing your mind. Okay, so we have a message from our director. She wants to talk to us a little bit. So her name is Pema, and she's Tibetan, and she lives here in Dharamsala near me. And we're very lucky to have her as our precious leader.
Hi, hello everyone. I hope all of you are keeping well and enjoying our sessions. So I'm here actually want to make a request for you all that I want to request you all make as much donation as possible, because right now is the time that we need your support. Tushita is kind of really struggling financially. Please make donations as much as possible. And uh, so we had been doing this online course for now exactly a month. We had been receiving donations as well as so many nice notes from you. So I want to thank so much for all those contributions and nice messages. And another thing that I want to mention is that we have Venerable Drolma and Felipe who have been doing this course for a month now. So contributions and offerings for them will be also appreciated. So you can use the same link to make the contributions. And when you open the page, so you will see a comment section. So in there, if you can mention their name clearly, if you are offering for them, so that it will be easier for us to differentiate what is being offered for them and to Tushita. And then the third one, we have a new online course that we are starting from Monday with a very special teacher. So Felipe will share the link here on the comment section. So visit the link and register for the course starting from Monday. It's for a week. So the course is especially it's for fundraising. So please register for the course, and we need your support. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the sessions. Have a good day or good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's start our review as usual. We started yesterday talking about the benefits of ethical discipline. So we reviewed there are 6 perfections, which are the ways in which one engages as a bodhisattva. And we can start practicing these, of course, before we get some official status as a bodhisattva. We can be like a baby bodhisattva. And so these 6 perfections are: start with generosity, and then ethical discipline, and then patience, and then joyous effort, and then concentration and wisdom. And so we've already talked about a bit about concentration when we were focusing on the meditation, and a lot more about the wisdom when we were talking about emptiness and selflessness. And then we did joyous effort, we're going to review, and ethical discipline we're going to review, and we're going to talk about generosity today. And then we also did patience when we talked about anger. That was more in the last class. Benefits of ethical discipline, that they help us maintain a calm and peaceful mind. And that basically ethical discipline is about being mindful of your body and speech, in particular, using your body and speech not to harm. So, as using, of course, your wisdom has to come in there. Wisdom is combined with all the 6 paramitas. So, not just doing whatever anyone wants, but also using your wisdom and giving and being kind. So, it's not refraining from harm, and then doing the opposite. So in some way, practicing the opposite, and then also benefiting. And sometimes those two overlap. So like when we talk about first not killing, and then we talk about protecting life. And sometimes when we're protecting life, we're also benefiting sentient beings. So those kind of overlap, but those are the three sort of levels of ethical discipline. So benefits include having a peaceful mind. We create better karmic results, which actually through this, when we create better karmic results, it's not only so that we can have you know, happiness and pleasure kind of thing. It's more so that we can continue to practice, continue to grow, and then manifest that bodhicitta aspiration. Because we do need resources, we do need time, we do need, you know, shelter and food and you know, energy and money in order to practice, you know, in order to continue to learn, and in order to have space to be able to meditate. Because if we don't have those things, then we're focused more on just surviving, basic survival. So this is also part of why we practice virtuous karma. And of course, virtuous karma brings us to a creates, you know, positive conditions for this life, but also for future lives. The basis of becoming a human is practicing virtue. So the fact that you are a human being right now is because you practiced a lot of virtue in some past life. And to continue, like if we don't hit, you know, liberation, or we don't get, you know, full enlightenment in this life, which is possible, but if we don't do it, then at least we've created the conditions to be born a human again, so that we can become enlightened in our next life. Okay. More respect from others is another benefit of ethical discipline, and then fewer bad habits. So just to remind you, the 10 non-virtues that Buddha recommended as guidelines. Let me put this on slideshow. Oops. 3 of body: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. 4 of speech: lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, and idle chatter. And then 3 of mind: ill will, covetousness, and wrong view. And then you can just imagine what the opposites of those are. So not only refraining from using mean, you know, name calling and profanity and things like that, and harsh speech, but also using your words to be kind, to make other people feel good. That would be your opposite of the non-virtue, practicing the virtue. And then using your words to benefit others would be when they ask you for advice, you know, when you have the ability to share, you know, some wisdom or knowledge, then you can practice that benefiting people with your speech. And then yeah, okay. So then we talked a little bit about vows. So yeah, thank you. Vows are making and holding a promise to refrain from non-virtue, and this creates an imprint in the mind that continues to have an effect even when we are not consciously engaged in the virtue or refraining from the non-virtue. So we take vows, and vows are really powerful in some ways, because we not only make a promise to ourselves, but we say the promise in front of others, okay, which makes us actually more likely to keep it, to follow it. And then we review those. We review what vows we have taken on a regular basis. And anytime we have the opportunity, we take them again in front of, you know, with like His Holiness the Dalai Lama or our teacher, you know, in our local center. We take them again, and then that refreshes them and strengthens them. And if we've broken them in any way, if, you know, we've sort of, you know, hedged or something or made a mistake, then retaking them refreshes them and renews them and repairs them. Okay. All right. Yeah, so that's ethical discipline. And just one other thing about ethical discipline is that it has lots of levels of subtlety. And of course, it's not always clear exactly what is the most ethical action in any one situation. So we have to look carefully. Let me see if I can find this. At our motivation, at our intention. I think it's in, oh, I can't do it right now. Okay. So who is it benefiting, right? Who is going to benefit the most? Is it ourselves or is it others? And is it for the short term or is it for lasting happiness? So we can look at some of these things. And is it for just a few people or is it for many, many people? So these are some of the questions that we can ask when we're looking at our motivation to make our actions and our speech as ethical as possible, is asking ourselves some of these questions. Is it for ourselves or is it for others? Is it for the short term or is it for the long term? And is it only for a few or is it for many? So looking at these sorts of things when we're making those decisions. So then we also talked about joyous effort. So joyous effort is having, delight, having rejoicing, being happy when yourself and other people do good things, create virtue in the world, create harmony in the world. So we spend a lot of time, hopefully, as Buddhists, rejoicing in what we do and in what others do, and even real small things, because that's what's going to uplift us. That's the whole positive psychology of the Buddhist path, is this idea that what really motivates us is bliss, is feeling good. And so when we can generate this feeling good about doing good acts, we're more likely to do them again in the future. My my headphones are running out of power, so I'm not going to use them, and I hope that you can still hear me, that it isn't too distorted. Okay, so joyous effort. Rejoicing even when we do very, very small things. And they also say that rejoicing is a very big part of collecting merit, and it's what they call the lazy person's way of creating virtuous karma, because we can rejoice in all of our teachers, in all the Buddhas, in all these amazing, beings who have come before us, who have worked so hard and, on their meditation practice, on developing wisdom, on practicing, the Dharma, learning to be kind and loving and generous toward others. And when we rejoice for them, it actually creates a positive imprint in our minds as well, in a big way. And when we rejoice for those who are, equal to us, like our peers and, the other students, we also share in the karma that they're creating. And same for even people who don't, or animals who don't have a lot of opportunity to create virtue. We can rejoice in when they're kind to their children, when they're kind to each other. I consistently am really happy when I see the monkeys taking care of their babies, or when they do their bonding thing with all their grooming, just seeing that as this connection thing that they create, and just rejoicing in connections and love between beings. And this rejoicing can help with the particular kind of laziness that I think is most difficult to overcome, which is the last one, this discouragement, okay? This belief that we can't do it, that we're not capable of doing it, because like meditation, to sit still is difficult. The mind is very used to constantly going and going and going. And I was, even this morning, I was meditating and I was noticing how even while I'm sitting and I have, committed to staying seated for 24 minutes, and I even have a guide going that I'm trying to listen to, but still I have this urge to get up, this urge to think about other things, this urge to move, and it was very interesting. It's like, no, and I have to recognize that is, that's just my mind's habitual way of thinking. And then when I get overwhelmed by that, when I start feeling like, well, then I just can't sit still, it's impossible for me because that urge is so strong, that's discouragement. Okay. But even just a moment of saying, okay, That's an urge. You accept it's there, but then you don't give into it. That's an area where we can rejoice, even if it's only once in 24 minutes, only once I was able to resist that urge to move, then I did it. I did resist. I did start to move it's like moving the Titanic, turning a cruise ship takes a really long time and it takes a lot of power. And so that's how it is with our minds. We have to, not get discouraged. Another one, the other two types of laziness are procrastination, putting it off, and attachment to useless activities. So we can start to shift our priorities. When I talk about renunciation, I often talk about this need to create space in our lives to be able to practice the Dharma, instead of spending all this time focused on all these other things that I think I have to do, but never creating space for future lives, never creating space for developing, my emotional intelligence. I can get really, bogged down in what we call, decorating our prison, instead of trying to get free from it. Okay. So then when we talk about joyous effort, we create a positive cycle here, okay? So we can start by thinking about the benefits of practicing the Dharma, the benefits of changing our attitudes, the benefits of learning to calm our mind. And then through thinking about that, we can become inspired. So it gives us energy, it gives us motivation to practice our meditation. And then we actually do it. We practice joyous effort, and we rejoice every moment that we're doing our practice. Even now, you're here, you made it to your computer, you turned on your computer, you're sitting in front of it, you're focusing on the teachings and rejoicing in that. Like, wow, yeah, I did it. I'm here, Shantideva talks about the practice of virtue being like a flash of lightning on a dark night, that it is fast, it is powerful, and it is quick. It can disappear very quickly. So this practice, a flat, if you've ever, been around where, like in New Mexico where I lived, we had a lot of lightning, and how powerful lightning can feel. It's scary in some ways, and it's just really strong. And that's, just even a moment of practicing Dharma compared to the billions of lifetimes that we have had, more, trillions, gazillions of lifetimes, when we didn't practice Dharma, when we didn't even consider getting free of samsara because we had no clue, right? But now, now we have this opportunity to crack it open. And that is so rejoicing even in the smallest thing, and then it builds on it. It builds on itself and just fills you. And then experiencing the results. As you do it, you start to enjoy it, and you start to see the benefits, and you just get happier. Overall, your relationships improve, your life changes, you make good decisions for your life. It starts to, again, like that snowball effect. Even the small changes start to eventually have a big effect in your life and your mind and in your relationships. I never, ever could have imagined that my life would be the way it is now. When I started this 15 years ago, never in a million years would I have been in India teaching all of you. It's just really brilliant. So, okay, that's my commercial for practicing Dharma and being joyful about it, right? Okay, so let's move on. I shouldn't get so excited. Ah. I inhale my tea. Okay, so let's talk about generosity. So one thing about the 6 perfections that we're doing this practice. So as Mahayana practitioners, we take our practice beyond just the foundational vehicle. and we take it to a level of where we start to focus on this full enlightenment and for the benefit of others. And so these practices that we do actually also build on each other. So the first one is generosity. So generosity starts to turn our focus from only on ourselves to opening to others. So it's a way in which we can start to open our hearts toward others. And that opening that we do, because the opposite, of course, of generosity is miserliness, this, this focus on keeping everything to ourselves, which of course reinforces this view that we're separate, we're independent. And I was listening to Lama Zopa this morning, and one of the things that he always says, and he says this consistently, and I think maybe it finally got through my thick skull, but the kindness of others in terms of, all sentient beings, we are not going to get enlightened alone. It's impossible. And so all our happiness, all of the thing, comes from others, so the kindness of others. So this whole idea that we can't do it alone. So how important others are. And I've been saying it in a different way. I've been saying it in terms of that the self is connected to all others. But even if we aren't, just turning the mind in this way, I'm sure it's not even clear in my mind yet. Okay, so generosity starts to open us to others. It starts to expand the heart. And then the second one, ethics, then once we have expanded our hearts to start to see others as more important, as dear, as, connected to us, then we don't want to harm them. So our ethical discipline becomes mindfulness and awareness of not harming. And then based on that not harming, even when they're harming us, we don't want to harm them. So that becomes our practice of patience, of learning to be calm, even in the face of difficult situations, is that we are willing to stay calm and not retaliate, not get back at others, to refrain from that. And of course, that has benefits for others and for ourselves. And then on top of that, the joyous effort becomes about, okay, now do I not only not want to harm you, but I want to benefit you. And in order to do that, I have to really work on my mind. And that takes effort. I have to be willing to take the time to put the energy in, to take on challenges in order to benefit others. Let me turn this on. In order to benefit others. And so our joyous effort becomes, this willingness to even take on the hardships to develop. And that supports our concentration, of course, because we need effort, we need joy in order to develop this calm abiding, this shamatha, in order to get us to practice, to sit, to focus on changing our minds. Because for most of us, it's not a very easy thing to do unless we have really powerful, karmic imprints for meditation. Most of us don't have that. So we have to develop that in this life. And then from that, with that focused mind, that calm abiding, then we can really penetrate the nature of reality and develop that wisdom of emptiness, which breaks everything wide open and makes them all so much easier to practice and liberates us from samsara, is the basis of the compassion we have to develop in order to get to full enlightenment. Okay, so those are how each of the 6 perfections builds on each other. So let's look at the different kinds of generosity. So we often think of generosity as giving money, right? And actually they say that is the easiest, that giving money and physical things is the easiest form of generosity. And that when we start to give these other things, that they're a little bit more difficult. So, and yeah, Yeah, and yet we find it difficult even to, give money because of this fear oftentimes that I'm not going to have enough. Um, and yeah, it's an interesting view because it becomes this view of scarcity, this view that there is never going to be enough, that there's not enough to go around, and that how can I possibly share? And it's an attitude that stops us. So generosity becomes about a view of a willingness to give. Okay, so of course we're not saying give everything away and make yourself a beggar, right? We're not saying that, but there is a distinction between, so I think of that movie about John Paul Getty, which was this extreme example of this man who was so focused on accumulating wealth and accumulating art and investing in art. And then it's a whole movie that came out about his grandson was kidnapped because the kidnappers thought that they could get money out of him, and how his daughter, the mother of the boy that was kidnapped, really tried to get, to work with their, her father. And it was just this sad story about he ended up dying alone, and just so, filled with, miserliness and just, self-centeredness, and how sad he was and how pathetic he was, because he had so much, he had billions of dollars, and yet he was so unhappy, because of this miserliness, because of this lack of generosity. Yeah. So this wish, generosity becomes about an attitude, a wish to give, even if we can't. We have an attitude of wanting to give, of opening to give. So we have a practice in Buddhism, a very basic practice of offering water bowls. So you can see behind me, there are these bowls that are set up right here underneath Lama Tsongkhapa, and those are bowls of water, and those they represent, so they're symbolic of giving lots of things. So we have the 7 typical ones that we talk about, which are traditional gifts that we would offer to an important guest, like in an Indian home. So the first one is water for washing, so washing the feet, water for drinking, so, quenching the thirst, candles or lights, flowers, incense, perfume, like some kind of massage oil, or, massaging, medicine in some ways, and then music and food. So those are like their traditional 8 offerings. We have 7 bowls set up because we often don't represent music. But this practice of offering water bowls, we do use water because water is easy, right? It's relatively cheap. Traditionally, it's been free. We haven't had to pay for it. Nowadays, more we have to pay for it. But it's considered something that is easy to offer. And the more that we do this, the more that we practice offering, because of course, like Lama Tsongkhapa is an enlightened being. He doesn't need water, right? He doesn't need any of these things. It becomes a practice of offering, a practice of generosity. And the more that we do this, the more that we practice offering, even on this very, very simple level, the more we will have a mind that is generous, a mind that is giving, a mind that is willing to give. So then the other one's protection from fear, love. Love has to do with giving time when someone is suffering. So being willing to spend time with someone who is going through a difficult time, even if it's a little uncomfortable for us to be present with their suffering. And even if we feel helpless that we can't stop their suffering, the fact that we're even willing to be present with that person, to listen to them, to hold their hand, to do some tonglen with them, is an amazing gift, and is often appreciated by others, even if we can't fix their problem, because they often know that their problem, can't be fixed, or that, and when we run in and try to fix everything, we're actually taking away from them their ability to deal with it on their own, to find their own inner strength.
So often just being present, and that's love, right? Wanting others to be happy, giving our time. Sometimes we're willing to give money, but we aren't willing to give time. And time can be so precious and so important to others. And then, of course, the last one is the Dharma. So spiritual advice is another way. Now, this one we can often skip to, you know, like we can't do the other ones, but we'll go right to telling people how they should be and how they should change and, you know, what they should do to make their lives better without even being asked. So in Buddhism, it's very important that we don't go out and try to convert people. We don't go out and try to tell them how to live. We become examples because we're working on ourselves, and we wait to be asked. Okay, so you won't have, there's no such thing as Buddhist missionaries. It's not the way it's done within Buddhism. It's very important that someone request, because then they're open to receiving when they request. And if they don't request, then you don't need to, you wait, right? And when they're ready, they will ask and they will be open because they have that in them. Okay, so that's generosity. Now I want to do a breakout group about, let me actually, before I share this, let's do this. So I want to talk about refuge. So refuge is one of the basic concepts within when you become a Buddhist. You take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And so taking refuge is based on two things. Okay, one is that there is a fear that you're going to suffer. Okay, and the other one is that you have a trust that the place that you're going, or the beings that you're trusting in, can actually protect you from what it is that you are afraid of. Okay, so we often think about refugees. So refugees have fear of their, you know, where they're living, that they're going to be killed by whatever is happening in terms of the war zones that they're fleeing. And they have trust that if they go to another place, that there they trust that there they won't be killed, that they will have, you know, some protection from that. Okay, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Or another example is, like, if you think of a child who's, you know, outside playing with their friends, and then the bullies come along and the bullies are going to beat them up, you know, or something. And so they have fear of being beat up. So they run to their dad for refuge because they know their dad can protect them from the bullies. So this is the idea of refuge, this fear and this trust. So the breakout group for you, I'd like you to discuss with others, what do you take refuge in? Okay, so where do you go when you are afraid of suffering? Okay, what do you take refuge in? Okay, so I think we can do 25 groups, and that'll give us about 3 or 4 people each in each group. So whenever you're ready, Felipe, let's break them out. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Venerable. Drolma, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Okay, I think everybody's about back. Okay, let's start again. So refuge from a Buddhist point of view is taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And another translation for this word refuge is also safe direction. So it's a decision that where we're going to pursue, where we're going to go, where we're going to, direct our lives, is that we can trust that if we follow the path of the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha, that we trust that it is going to remove our suffering. So that's why it's considered safe direction. So let's look at this screen. So the way to approach the Dharma is actually seeing ourselves as someone who is sick, someone who is having problems, someone who does not know everything, right, already. Recently I had a really nice teaching from Serkong Rinpoche, and he reminded me that when we approach our teachers and when we approach the Dharma, we do really have to have this view of that we need medicine, we need help. And instead of coming in with this idea of, I already know everything and, I'm so great and like this, coming from a place of humility where we're willing to learn from others. And so we see if we're the sick person, because we have this ignorance in our minds that perpetuates our suffering. And we have never experienced life without the ignorance. So seeing the Buddha as the doctor, the one who diagnoses what our illness is, we're back to the Four Noble Truths. The doctor who says, you tell them the suffering, what are the symptoms? And then the doctor determines what the cause is, which is what the Buddha did. And then says that there is hope, there is a prognosis, you can get better. And then how do you do it? So then the Dharma becomes the medicine, the path, the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections that we've been talking about, the 8-fold noble path. But if you go to the doctor and he says, okay, take this medicine, and you go and you get the prescription and then you set it on your table, but you never actually take it, then you aren't going to get free from the suffering, right? If you never actually take the medicine. So the Dharma becomes the actual refuge, in the sense that it's actually the thing that is going to free you from the suffering. So the Buddha can't just wave a magic wand and cure us of our ignorance. We have to do the work. We have to do the meditations. We have to do the study. We have to practice changing our minds, practice in our relationships with others, practicing patience, practicing kindness, practicing generosity, all those things. And then the Sangha are the community that support us. Okay, so they're like the nurses who now we've taken the medicine and they help us to continue to practice, to continue to take our medicine, and they support us in getting better, so on the path to getting better. So right now we have this virtual Sangha, there are 71 of us, who are practicing. I don't know if that includes Felipe or not, maybe 72. But there are 72 of us in this Sangha right now. And by touching base, with others who are like-minded, we become inspired, we become encouraged, and we become better able to practice because we have this connection with others. And the importance of being reminded again and again and again, because, we have these powerful habits of not practicing, of seeing things incorrectly, of these negative attitudes that we have in our minds. And the more that we can be reminded from others and from the teachings, the more our minds are going to start to have a different habit, to start to see things differently. So when I do my reviews and I say the same thing over and over again, this is actually a technique. And Lama Zopa does this really well. He will consistently say again and again the same thing so that it gets through, our thick skulls and into our minds. Okay, so I want to spend some time with Tantra. But before I do, there's a resource. Lama Zopa is giving teachings, recording teachings like every other day at Kopan Monastery. So Felipe, if you could bring up that link, I think it would be really beneficial for people to start seeing, because so you know what I'm talking about?
Just the link for Kopan Monastery for the website?
No, Lama Zopa's teachings that he's making specifically related to the COVID-19.
Ale.
So,
Okay, I'll find it out.
COVID-19, and you can, there's a specific resources or something, and because Lama Zopa, even though you may have to really concentrate to get what his message is, he has such a deep understanding of the Dharma. His mind is so much immersed in the Dharma that when you hear teachings from him, you can get deeper insights, because he I've only been practicing full time for a while, and so I have some insights in my mind, but his mind is just filled with it, just like so immersed in it. So whatever you can glean from his wisdom it's going to be very powerful. Okay, so let's talk about Tantra. So remember, we had this, we had the three vehicles that we started off with at the beginning of the course. We talked about the Theravada, or the foundation vehicle. We've been talking a lot about the Mahayana vehicle, this view of emptiness of both self and phenomena. And then we talked about bodhicitta. And so this third vehicle, the tantric vehicle, is considered the quick path, okay? And quicker than what it's opposite, or it's those other two vehicles, the Theravada and the Mahayana, are considered the sutra vehicle, okay? And the sutra vehicle is considered the causal vehicle. So within the sutra, we create the causes to become enlightened. And one can become enlightened simply practicing those two vehicles. So both the Theravada vehicle and the Mahayana vehicle, when you practice those two together, you can become enlightened. But it takes a very long time. So the tantric vehicle, instead of creating the causes to become enlightened, now we take the result as the path. So it becomes the resultant vehicle, in the sense that the resultant vehicle is that this idea that we imagine and we connect with our own future Buddhahood, our own future enlightenment, and we take the result as the path. So it is based in the three principles of renunciation, emptiness, and bodhicitta, and they are the same as the sutra vehicle, as the Theravada and Mahayana, and that is our basis, and we have to be aware of what those are, because practicing Tantra without renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and it becomes more like an ego trip. Because if we start imagining ourselves as already enlightened, and we don't have this basis of we're doing it to benefit others, then it can become like a power trip, or it can become like narcissism, or it can become like this huge ego, this huge pride thing, okay? So it's based in this renunciation, creating the, creating space in our lives to practice bodhicitta, that we're doing it to benefit others, and emptiness in the sense that both us as a deity and others who we are wanting to benefit are empty of any inherent, absolute, or concrete existence, okay? So in the quick path, relatively, in the sense that it's a very powerful path, this resultant path, it's very powerful, and it takes a shorter time relatively, in the sense of Milarepa was recognized to have become enlightened using the tantric path in one lifetime. So he went from being a murderer to being an enlightened being in one lifetime, okay? And so he worked really, really hard, very, very hard in order to do this. And so they say that the sutra path can take what they call 3 countless eons. So an eon, if you're familiar with that word, or a kalpa. So for those of you who are, in Indians, a kalpa is like the time it takes to go from the Big Bang to this full expansion, and then the big crunch back to another Big Bang. So that's like an eon or a kalpa. And so we're talking, when we say countless eons, we're talking about a really, really, really long time. Whereas Tantra, if you were to enter this path, even if you didn't get enlightened in this lifetime, it would be like maybe 7 lifetimes instead of 3 countless eons. And that's what they talk about, the quick path. So when we talk about mantra being mind protection, mantras are this enlightened speech of a Buddha. So the more that we practice a mantra, the more we are connecting with the speech that is also our own enlightened speech. So mantras are words that an enlightened being has said, and when we repeat them, we are acting as if we are enlightened beings because we are repeating their speech. And it is mind protection, because when we are saying mantras and we're connecting to our enlightened selves, our own future enlightened selves, then we are protecting from the negative thoughts and the negative habits that can happen. So deities within Buddhism have 3 aspects actually. One, they're actual beings, okay, in the sense that they are beings who have become enlightened. So we can talk about Tara, we can talk about Medicine Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, Vajrasattva. You may have heard of some of these, Maitreya, all these beings that have become enlightened, Chenrezig. But we're also talking about enlightened qualities. So Chenrezig is the enlightened manifestation of compassion, okay? So, and they are also reflections of our own enlightened nature. So each one of us has the ability to manifest unlimited compassion, just like Chenrezig. So we make this connection when we visualize Chenrezig. We are connecting to our own ability to become Chenrezig ourselves. And this is what we call the resultant path. And Tantra, it utilizes visualization in order to bring that experience of an enlightened being into our minds. So we have a lot of difficulty with visualizing ourselves as enlightened because we are so connected to ourselves as ordinary beings. We've never known anything different. We're very, habitually connected to seeing ourselves as only, as flawed, right? As having all these suffering, having all this negative, all these negative emotions. So to start to imagine that we could be, these extraordinary beings that are free from negative emotions, we have to have some kind of a reference, right? So we use the images of enlightened beings in order to practice seeing ourselves as enlightened, okay? So this also is connected to the whole idea of Buddha nature or Buddha potential. that each one of us does have the possibility to become enlightened. And then we connect to that and we visualize ourselves as manifesting these qualities, as manifesting these enlightened qualities. And so it's very much like a fake it until you make it kind of thing. You practice and you pretend that you are enlightened already by, and then eventually you do it. You become enlightened with all the other practices, of course, first too. So I have this quote here from Lama Yeshe's Introduction to Tantra. And I don't know, we are probably not going to have much time for questions today because I had so much to cover. But I don't want to stop talking about this. So I hope you understand that you can, submit your questions through email. And I'll put up my email so you can submit them that way, but be patient when I'm answering email. Okay, so the tantric solution to this problem is extremely radical. It involves a complete transformation of our ordinary vision. This is the central point of the tantric approach. The same desire energy that ordinarily propels us from one unsatisfactory situation to another is transmuted through the alchemy of Tantra into a transcendental experience of bliss and wisdom. So the practitioner focuses the penetrating brilliance of this blissful wisdom so that it cuts like a laser beam through all false projections of this and that and pierces the very heart of reality. So what we're doing with this tantric approach is that we're using visualization, and we're also using this energy of desire. So I'm sure that you have experienced when you really, really, really want something, when you have a strong craving for something, you really do whatever you can to get that thing, okay? So that is powerful energy. That's powerful desire energy. And in particular, when we start talking about Tantra, we're also talking about desire energy, not just for things like, cheesecake or, a good job or, a beautiful car or apartment or whatever, or partner. We're also talking about the power of sexual energy, okay? So this is only a very, very small part of Tantra when you get to this very powerful sexual energy. But being able to use that physical energy that wants things and channeling it into this into becoming an enlightened being, into our awareness of wisdom, of emptiness, okay? So we generate these feelings of bliss, of wonderful feelings, and then we propel that, we use that laser beam of the mind to start to see, to get through that barrier of seeing emptiness conceptually and going into seeing it non-conceptually, okay? So we're actually using the energies in the physical body and we are focusing them on this. So you have to, you have to get a lot more teachings on Tantra on how to do this. And it's an incredible, once you have, worked through, the sutra path a bit, then you can start working on this tantric path, and it's very powerful and it's very beneficial. Okay, I'm going to stop there. We're going to do a meditation now on a visualization of working with this idea of becoming enlightened beings. And we're not going to visualize ourselves as any specific one. We're just going to be in our ordinary bodies, but we're going to imagine that we have all these qualities and see how that, imagining that using visualization can actually move us closer to becoming enlightened. Okay, take it away, Felipe.
Thank you, Venerable. So please everyone go back to a comfortable position. Do your best to keep your body rounded, back loosely upright. Allowing the bell to bring you into the space of the body first. We'll take a few minutes to settle down. Letting go of any sign of tension. Allow your body to become relaxed and stable. Release all tightness from the body and allow any worries or concerns in the mind also to be dissolved. Now spend a few minutes simply observing the natural rhythm of your breathing in order to settle your mind. And when your mind is calm and clear, Let go of observing the breath. Let go of observing the body. And visualize that in the space above your head, there's a sphere of white light, somewhat smaller than the size of your head. And it's pure, transparent, no material. So spend a few minutes concentrating on the presence of this light. Don't worry if it does not appear sharply. It's enough just to feel that it's there. So having stabilized the presence of the sphere of light on top of your head, think that it represents all the universal goodness, love, and wisdom, the fulfillment of your own highest potential, the summit of the development of all the good qualities in your heart, which are the purpose of the spiritual path. Visualizing the sphere possessing all these qualities, imagine it decreases in size until it's about 1 inch in diameter, and it descends through the top of your head to your heart center, right at the middle of your chest, at the level of your heart. And from that point, it begins to expand once more. Slowly, gently spreading to fill your entire body. As this happens, all the solid parts of your body dissolve and become light. Your organs, bones, blood vessels, tissues, skin, all become pure, translucent, white light. Everything becoming in the same nature of these qualities of wisdom, loving kindness, and compassion, developed to their highest potential. Your mind becomes blissful, joyful, and light. So simply rest on the experience of your body as a body of light. Think that all your problems, negativities, afflictions, and hindrances have completely vanished, and that you have reached a state of wholeness and perfection. any thought or distracting object should appear in your mind, let it also dissolve into this white light. And if you do become distracted, simply recognize it and gently bring your attention back to the experience of your body as a body of light, imbued with all the good qualities, experiencing a state of wholeness. Simply let your mind rest in that clear, natural state of your own mind. And slowly coming out of the meditation, bring your attention back to your body. Feel it grounded and stable and solid. Once again. And now we move on to the dedication. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored and find repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever diseases are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain, to dispel the miseries of the world.
Okay, so so here's my email address. If you can send that out to everybody, Felipe,
Yeah.
please.
Sure, I'll do it now.
Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we're gonna stop here for now. So please consider taking the, Venerable Lexolt's course on healing compassion that starts on Monday. And then I'll be starting again teaching after next week sometime. So it won't be next week, it'll be after next week. And then I'll start teaching again. So stay tuned, look on Facebook, look on our website, and yeah, everybody take care and stay well and keep practicing.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Venerable Drolma for teaching this course, and thank you everyone who have joined, because this is definitely also a dependent arising. Without no students, there's no teacher. Without no teacher, there's no students. And also because of your generosity and Tushita being able to provide these courses. So we thank you all for being a part of this, and also request you to, no donation is too small. So if you feel like you can contribute in some way to continue to have this Dharma present from the side of Tushita, then we'll be very, very happy. And I rejoice in everyone's merit and in the good energy that we created in these sessions. So thank you very, very, very much.
Yes, rejoice, rejoice. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.